Welcome, everyone, to the Captive Audience. It is the 5th of August as we race through the summer and we're into the dog days. And I'm Kevin Hoare, and we are here with Representative Court Boyce of District 1, which is kind of the south and west corner of the state, Curry County and Douglas, parts of Douglas, right? And uh,
Coos.
and Coos. And really, I think one of the most beautiful parts of the state, to be honest. And we're so glad to have you here on the show today.
Well, Kevin, this is a great thing you're doing and benefits people. And there's more and more interest developing over time. And just great. I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, and we always have some fun on here, so I want to make sure, folks. I'm going to put it at the beginning and the end. That is Representative Boyce's uh, legislative website, and here is his campaign website, which also has great information. And it says on there, no one will outwork me and no one will care more. And I think you live up to that every day. And I've gotten to know you and know that you've also got issues that are really, they're issues that we talk about all the time statewide, but they really affect your district a lot. And you're one of the main people, the go-to people, if I need to know what's going on with forest management, wildfires, and then, of course, several other issues that have come up over the years that are affecting everybody: homelessness, economic development, and, of course, the dreaded offshore wind farms that they were going to impose off the shores of Curry County. And we have a lot to talk about today because there's stuff that's happened with all that. But why don't we start out with the big piece of news that's developed that I know of since we last had you on, which is that the governor has called a special session, oddly enough, for the end of August, August 29th, I believe, the Friday before Labor Day, which sounds to me kind of like one of these squeeze plays. Like, you're going to give me what I want, and you're going to get out of town, and then you can go have your Labor Day weekend. But she wants to pass a bunch of taxes to pay for a transportation budget whose main problem isn't revenue. Its main problem is what they're doing with the money, according to a very, very good, actually excellent opinion piece that I saw in the Oregonian by a guy named Joe Courtwright. He's an
Okay.
economist, and um, and he actually says that it's a financial mess. But it's interesting; he's not on the same end of the political spectrum necessarily as the rest, like, of Republicans. He is an urban policy think tank guy, and he's the co-founder of No More Freeways. But he says that it's a spending problem, and I think that's one thing that Republicans have been saying all along. So the governor is calling a special session to go raise taxes to solve a spending problem.
Well, they just, you know, it goes back to your open there. I mean, Oregon is worth defending, and that's why we're here. And so, thank you for the nice things you said. And I do take my job probably a little bit too serious, but Oregon is in a very tough position. Somewhat related to the Courtwright editorial there is how bad businesses are being treated in our state. And some of them just said, hey, thumbs down. We gave it our best. We're out of here. And, Kevin, we don't even have a good tracking system to inventory the businesses that are leaving, small ones in particular. I mean, the Intel debacle of job cuts is over 5,000 now. I mean, I had to double check that because it sounded ridiculous, but it is true. And how that's going to affect Metro Oregon, especially the suburbs that rely on those jobs, and they're good paying jobs, they're not going to come back. When we got to fight like heck to get them back and to not lose any more, retain what we have. But that's a gigantic issue. You mentioned wildfire. I got my Oregon State Fire Marshal hat on that I'm very proud of, and goodness sakes, here it is, the 5th of August, and we've had a fairly mild, at least compared to 2024 fire season. So I give a lot of credit to even the Forest Service 10 years ago. You know that I was basically bitter enemies with their way of monitoring the fires. And I have not had one serious fire in my three counties yet this year. But yeah, thanks for bringing up the special session. I'm not going to be there. There are plenty of options. Just opening up the Capitol, cost $1 million that we don't need to waste.
Yeah.
And we nobody on the other side, even though our leadership has been phenomenal in dealing with and providing strategies to push back against the new taxes. But as you said, yeah, there's about 8 or 9 specific taxes that Oregonians cannot afford. This is the worst time. My goodness, the worst time to
Yeah.
be raising taxes in a state that is on the decline. So, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen there. I just know that the majority of my party is absolutely opposed to any tax, fee, or rate increases whatsoever.
Well, and the governor's not promising to do anything about holding accountable any of these entities, including um, the Department of Transportation made errors in its calculation and found out they were $1 billion missing from what they thought they were going to have. And they didn't fire anybody. I think for the very first time, just the other day, I saw that they are, in fact, going to start reorganizing things at ODOT. It really took all of that to get them to think that they need to overhaul the leadership structure. Um, I
Yeah.
think that's a department that needed a funding crisis if that's what it took for them to finally do something about the leadership and the bureaucracy, which is not the same as the people that are doing actual work like filling potholes and plowing snow and repairing roads. Those people, the governor's laying off, right? But the bureaucratic overhead and the waste and the empty floors in the top of the Department of Transportation building, all that, they weren't going to look at that until they had a funding crisis.
Oregon's track record is disregarding or being indifferent to the people that get hurt the most, whether it is union employees that do the work. I think that's a very good point you just made there that, Oregon has a massive backlog of maintenance, and we are caught up in the whole green energy program, bridges. Just one example here is the Abernathy Bridge in Clackamas County is, my goodness, what is it, 8 or 9? Uh, might even be 70 million. Forgive me. I just saw that a few days ago. But anyway, the I-5 bridge, which I strongly oppose, there's no way we're going to be able to afford that. Bike lanes that go nowhere, excuse me, the disregard any cars whatsoever. People,
Yeah,
uh,
they're
you
going to
know,
reduce capacity on the bridge at a
yeah,
time when it's overwhelmed with cars. I just drove on it a few days ago, and it was like an hour just to get through there.
what a planning disappointment that is. I mean, we can do better than that. And I was telling Lars the other day, the 33 major Oregon departments that we have, not one in the 3 years I've been in the legislature has come to us, either side or both sides, and said, hey, we have managed well. We have a little bit of a budget surplus. We're not going to ask for a increase in the next 2 years funding needed to keep our departments going and hire more and more people. Government expands. Not one has said that. So that's the story of Oregon right now. That's the story of a very blue state that is just slowly but surely. Use the word decline to be polite, but I mean, people are going into poverty. I mean, we worry about union jobs, ODOT, possibly being sacrificed. What about the people in the mills that have lost their jobs, families disrupted? And there's no excuse for that. We just, importing logs, importing lumber, with the greatest tree growing spot on the planet, this heritage. There's no way we could ever log or harvest the trees fast enough, as you know, Kevin, as they grow. There's just no way.
Yeah.
It's just like our fish. It is a renewable resource, and we are managing poorly. So that's a good reason to stay motivated for me to stay in the legislature and try and make a difference.
By the way, there's another resource that they're managing poorly, and it's the citizens of the state who, as you said, as you pointed out, are getting up and leaving because they're like, I've had enough of this. Um, and by the way, that Abernathy Bridge, in 2017, when they supposedly got this tax increase to pay for that, and the I-5 Rose Quarter, we know the I-5 Rose Quarter, they didn't do anything, and now the price is doubled.
Yeah, and the federal government pulled the plug on
Yeah,
their match for the Rose Quarter thing. So, and we're talking about building baseball stadiums. We're talking about trying to keep the Blazers. Anyway, yeah, it's we have a spending problem. We do not back to basics. I mean, you just can't
and we
say.
have a competence problem, right? Because even when they not only spend money, but then they don't get stuff done. And it says here, you mentioned about the Abernathy Bridge. ODOT finally found $50 million to get it started because there was nothing allocated to the Abernathy Bridge in 2017. Nothing.
Yeah, we'll just play the shell game. Move it over here. No worries. We don't have to account for it. We don't have. Yeah, it's stunning sometimes.
Well, and I guess what do you expect from a department where somebody makes a math error and comes up $1 billion short and nobody gets fired? Geez, maybe it's time for some reorganization, and that is maybe going to happen, but we're going to have to keep the pressure on. And but the economy, tax revenues walking out of the state, or driving out of the state in U-Hauls, and this is something they should really be concerned about. I don't think it's necessarily being replaced with an equivalent amount of tax revenue or people that are looking at Oregon as an opportunity. They might be looking at it as a place where you can get free stuff for now. But you mentioned, and we talked about last week, the Intel situation. Since the last time we talked, it's doubled. Now it's 5,400 jobs. That's 5,400 jobs, and I think the average salary for those jobs is somewhere around $150,000 average.
Yep.
That's a lot of money that's saying goodbye. And then Multnomah County itself has lost 5,100 jobs over the past year. The state's economists say Oregon is in a growth recession or near stagnation,
Mhm.
which is kind way of saying that Oregon's not doing well. And the rest of the country is starting to really pick up steam.
Sure.
There's other states that are booming. People want to move there. They don't have state income taxes, or they've got infrastructure. They've got affordable housing. They want businesses to come there and grow. And Oregon's saying we don't want that. And so much so that CNBC, not exactly in the tank for Republicans, said Oregon is one of the worst states for business. It's also listed as the fourth worst place to move to. And the Oregonian reported, and I'm reading straight from a really good Oregon Catalyst article that has, it's Dr. Eric Fruits, who's been a pretty good, reasonable economist to give us shed light on stuff. He said, Oregon's current fifth graders posted bottom of the barrel math scores that were measurably worse than those in 45 other states. That's not exactly a magnet for getting people to want to come to Oregon, is so that we can take your fifth grade child and not teach them to read. It's just not, that's not how you lure people here.
What's the first thing if people are going to come to Oregon? What's the first thing they look at? Especially it's a family oriented. They're going to look at the schools. They're going to look at the tax structure. They're going to look at the crime rate, and we're failing in all those areas. And Oregon originally being such a hot spot, Portland initially being such a city of source of pride for us, and I wouldn't go to Portland now for anything. I'll never give up trying to overcome the issues there so it can come back. But we've lost the spirit of competition when we don't even care if we compete with. It's like, let's just use the Oregon Ducks or even the Beavers, for example. I mean, they want to win. Whatever it takes, they want to win. Oregon doesn't have a clue on that. Last business-oriented governor we had was Vic Katia. That was over 40 or almost 40 years ago. I used to take him upriver, and what he was a true statesman. He would do, he and Frohnmeyer and Norma Paulus, my cousin Bev, first cousin Bev Clarno, they would do anything to reach across the aisle and get successes to solve problems. And we just lost that. And so it's all about dividing us. When I first got here 3 years ago, I didn't really agree with that, but I had to see it, learn it the hard way. And yes, they're just, the other side votes as a block, and it's hurting the people I represent, and it really puts us on the fight, as you know, Kevin.
And it feels like across the country, Oregon's no exception, Democrats are arguing with each other about how socialist and radical to be, and doubling and tripling down on the policies that were rejected nationally and are still doing great harm to this state. By the way, you mentioned that it was a pretty hot place 20 years ago. Here's what it says in this article. 20 years ago, Oregon was winning. In 2004, outlets such as CBS News and USA Today called Portland one of America's most livable cities. Our economy was so hot that in Washington County, the county actually charged Intel $1,000 head tax for hiring too many workers.
And Intel gladly paid it.
That's right. And today we rank near the bottom of job growth, while Clark County, Washington, right across the river, is booming. Or as we know, the fastest growing city in Oregon is Vancouver, Washington. And I've heard that many times over the years, and it's continued to be the case. But we don't, what if the Ducks and the Beavers said, you know what, we don't want to do any better than 27th in the Big Ten now. We're fine with that. Come play for our team. You 4-star and 5-star recruit, come to Oregon, because we're going to fight to be 27th out of 28.
I think it's a great analogy, actually.
It's laughable. Like, literally, people in the stands will start booing. And that's what we have to do in 2026. We have to start booing this stuff that's hurting our state. And right now, I went just a few weeks ago to a Democrat town hall. It was a town hall billed as the Attorney General, Dan Rayfield, and which I know you know him well, and Paul Evans, and
Gomberg.
Not Gomberg. It was
Gomberg?
No, it was the guy who keeps saying all the time that he's a lawyer. He fits it into every description or every sentence he says. Anderson, Tom Anderson. Is that a Tom Anderson?
Anyway, yeah, he's South Salem state rep.
Yep. And then I think there was a state senator there too. She's from the area. I just blanking on her name right now. But what was interesting was they didn't take any questions from the audience about the transportation bill, the challenges Oregon's facing, the difficulty of, affordable housing. They didn't take a single question about an actual problem that they have influence and control over. They spent the entire time complaining about President Trump. And they talked about how they need to stop fascism and there's no kings. And they did nothing but make speeches. And then when I thought, oh, good, now we're going to get some questions, I wrote some questions down on a piece of paper. And they didn't get asked. As you can easily imagine, the staff was like,
Everybody knows who you are, Kevin.
I don't know if this group knew who I was, but I do know that they knew my question was way too reasonable. And I did not come in like, why do you hate America? Which is a great question to ask. But I didn't put that down. I put something down there that sounded reasonable, like how much is it costing the state of Oregon to file these lawsuits to block the Trump administration?
Well, you probably read the article that Attorney General Rayfield is involved in 33 class action lawsuits combined with other states. It's just what a waste.
He was more than happy to tell everybody that that's all he's doing.
Yeah.
What? We're not fighting crime. We're just fighting the president.
Well, and the sanctuary city and county statuses are all locked in there, and he wants to make sure that's how they get their voter base increased because population is not increasing in Oregon; it's decreasing, at least right on the edge of decreasing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a tremendous, tremendous disappointment, and what a waste of absolutely valuable resources that are getting more and more scarce in our state.
Now, we are seeing a pretty significant influx of drug addicted homeless urban campers, offsetting that population that's leaving. But I don't know if that's going to work out for us as a long term plan. What happened in this town hall though is they didn't take any questions at a town hall. They let people that they handpicked out of the audience to
Make a
come
speech.
up and eat up at literally a half hour making their own 2 minute, 3 minute speeches
Okay.
to the audience about how angry they are at President Trump. And I was just like, these are this is an attorney general, some state legislators, and they run things. And they didn't take any questions about stuff that they actually run.
Nope. Those people. What we're learning, you really see this at the national level. Well, both, but they're addicted to anger. That's what keeps them going, and
Yeah.
they're, the 11th commandment, love your neighbor. I mean, forget it. It ain't gonna happen, and it's they are the problem, and they're unreachable. It's. The good book says, "Let us reason." That's really hard to overcome with folks that are. I mean, it's like they're ready. I'll just leave it at that for now. But it's a sign of the times for sure.
Well, and I think that if the population that's unhappy with how things are going were there, that'd have been a different town hall. And if some of them that are really piping mad at the fact that they've got homeless people sleeping in front of their store, stealing stuff, and defecating on the sidewalk, destroying the livability of their neighborhoods,
Yep.
they're there. I think that'd be a different kind of town hall. But instead, it was a bunch of people from a group I've heard of called Indivisible. I think you've heard of them too. And
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Oh
and they're a bunch of leftist busybodies that like to go around and kind of scream at people at town halls that they disagree with,
yeah.
and then do this. And so that's all that happens. So I think the people running the state are dysfunctional if they think that's going to serve anyone's best interest. But I also know that all the things we're talking about, there's two sides to it. There's a side where there's what's happening, and there's a side that what could be happening that would be a lot better. And I think we're starting to see some of this. And so let's talk about a few positive things.
Okay.
Um, Someone in the Bureau of Land Management, I don't know if it's because President Trump sent an executive order and Secretary Burgum said, get going on what the president said, or Lars Larson pointing out that BLM did the guy that was running it, or the Northwest Oregon BLM manager, Dennis Seitzel, um, apparently didn't have a clue that they should be harvesting more timber and weren't doing it. And then a few days ago, something came out saying that they just harvested $13.5 million, or 7.7 million board feet of timber, which is enough wood to build 3,000 homes, which they haven't built.
Hmm.
And they managed 2.4 million acres, and that was 7.7 million board feet from 1,670 acres. I mean, so that's not a lot. Now, they really wanted everyone to know they're doing it. What is going on there? Like, why isn't BLM, their boss is saying, get moving? And I think he means it.
Well, I'll give Trump the credit. I'll give Burgum the credit. People are tired of seeing the waste. They're trying to see the environmental extremists that tie everything up in legal challenges and really hurt our schools, our communities, our public safety. There's just so many examples of that, Kevin, throughout especially the western part of the state, but the entire all of Oregon. And so that, yeah, that money comes back to the certain amount goes to the back to the federal government, and a certain amount goes back to the counties. And so, yeah, it is turning slowly. I would like to go a little bit faster, but it is good news, certainly.
Well, I think you said something before we went on the air about how it's still only a fourth of what it has been in the past, the amount of timber they're harvesting, and they could go quite a bit faster. And the money from these timber sales goes to 18 of Oregon's counties that really need the money.
Yeah, it's a shared receipt principle, and so if all the contracts are in one of the bigger counties, it gets spread out by a formula that's really fair and been acceptable. My grandfather, back in the 30s, when he was Curry County Commissioner, actually helped negotiate that entire agreement, which ultimately became federal law, the ONC Act. But yeah, to a statistic that we often use that I think is really helpful, very easy to follow, important, is that in those 18 counties, the BLM portion has nothing to do, Kevin, with the Forest Service portion of public lands. But in those 18 counties, it grows by 1.2 billion board feet every year. We're
Hmm.
only harvesting one fourth of that, which is about 220 million board feet. So to add 50 million board feet is not really a great boasting opportunity, but it is a step in the right direction. And again, the big when the American taxpayers and the Oregonians learn that once, if we don't harvest it, now logging is not the only tool to manage forest well, but it is an important tool, as you well know. But when the American public figures out, well, after we log or after we have a fire, and those trees sit there on the stump still with value, they need to be logged within a 2-year period. Just because they're burned doesn't mean they still, let's just say each tree, and there's millions of them, are worth $1,500, how far that could go. Instead, they sit there on the stump, and you can't go in and replant. So it just becomes unusable land for, sometimes up to 50 years. So yeah, that's where we are. But I hope that statistic, it does get us up to maybe 30% of the growth rate. And by sustained yield, that whole principle is you can never log in Oregon and it's a good law, state and federal. You can never log or harvest trees in Oregon faster than the rate of growth.
And you just said we can't. Only harvesting it at one quarter the rate of growth.
That's correct. That's correct.
So, and then there's the issue of how we can actually reduce the chances of wildfire by doing this. I was listening to something the other day. Small diameter wood, which you can get from like down below the trees, like the stuff that catches fire and really makes these fires hot, and the underbrush which can be removed, and the roads that you need to have in order to get there. They're trying to make those roads now. The Trump administration is trying to make it so those roads will actually start to go through, so you can get to these things and fight the fires. But small diameter wood is actually can be pretty lucrative if you pull it out of there, and it's really not. This is not like you know. Um, Giant old growth 150-foot tall trees we're talking about small diameter trees, some of which have to be removed because they aren't doing well, and it would be better if they were out of there instead of acting as kindling. Well, there's so much we could be doing, and so when we look at how it's like, here's what we are today and here's what we could be, I like that optimistic future that it could be. And then we start to look at the barriers to that optimistic future, and there are many. um, and we just had a legislative session, and the governor that is and her team is putting out how we just don't have enough money to fight the wildfires. Knock on wood, it's been a mild season, but why didn't they make sure of that? Was it just another hostage they were taking? To say, well, you gotta do X, Y. I thought it was the kicker. They wanted to take like the kicker and just put it all into fighting wildfires, and that was not going anywhere. So I think there was the Zen tax, right, which is that gum. It's a nicotine gum tax, and they say, well, it's not going to be enough. Who's in charge in that legislative session? I forget now.
Well, we're not taking our greatest responsibility to the public serious enough, in my view. The greatest threat to public safety we have is wildfire, more so than an earthquake, more so than climate change, whatever you want to look at. We have the proof in history that the relative level of risk is just off the chart, and so to not do that, and the Oregon Health Authority is 1/3 of the state budget, and that is over a 2-year period is $37 billion. A lot of that goes to illegal immigrants here, and they get free education, they get free medical, they get free housing, and sometimes the housing. And see, this is where we're outvoted. The housing, they get preferential treatment, which is constitutionally totally illegal, and
Yeah.
that's that's just one of a series of different frustrations and concerns we have that we are just I work with 10 women and 13 men on my side, and they are just so incredibly dedicated, and so yeah, we're just gonna keep up the fight. We're gonna make common sense legal again in Oregon. Sooner
I
or later.
love it. Yeah, that's your objective. Make common sense legal again. Very simple. I love that message. And um, there was some good news. Thank goodness. This is one thing that the Trump administration, the federal government, was going to do. By the way, this is the Trump administration that all those indivisible, crazy people were screaming and foaming at the mouth at this town hall. This is another thing they did that ticks those people off. But I think there's a different take on this in Curry County, isn't there? Nearly 195,000 acres of southern Oregon coast, which was going to be identified as sites for offshore wind development, has been rescinded by the federal government. And so now, because there were a lot of people who were pretty upset. Looked like I lost you in the camera there.
Sorry, I had to
That's all
plug
right.
my charger in. I forgot.
Oh, no worries. Well, but it's good because I thought maybe you're also just so excited that the like yay, that the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management came and pretended to listen to people and patronize them at all of these sessions, and then went away saying, "I just don't think they understand how good this is." That we're going to have all these wind farms right off the pristine coast and ruin the sport fishing industry um, and uh, and frankly not generate very much in the way of electricity in the end either. That's done. That's gone. We're very
Yeah.
fortunate, aren't we?
Uh, Remind me, how did the Indivisible group? How did they respond to that, or did they? Did you say?
Well, Indivisible is convinced that they can control the weather by forcing everybody to use electricity from offshore wind, windmills, and solar panels. That's what they said. They're like, well, climate justice here. And so they were going to deal a good, 195,000 acres of climate justice on the people of Southern Oregon, which at all these feedback sessions was overwhelmingly against the
Yep.
offshore wind. It wasn't close, right?
It's the twilight zone, and I often get reminded of that serving in the legislature. But I follow a group, Kevin, by the it's called CO2 Coalition, and they approved for 15 years. They have been, they fund themselves, a group of scientists from around the world that they've absolutely proved over and over and over again that since time began, we're in a cycle. There's nothing new about that. The temperature's barely going up. The Antarctic is not melting, and so when it comes to green energy, who isn't for alternative energy? However, sometimes and usually it is subsidized to the point to where it is taxpayer funded, and it doesn't work. It does
Yep.
not work. And so the offshore wind, I studied that for 4 years. I wanted to make sure that it was as ridiculous as it initially seemed. And over time, I was convinced of that. When somebody comes in and said, we are going to put a lot of money into your communities, you have both eyes open, but you take an assessment of that. When the tribes, the county governments, the ports, the fishermen, and the good part of this decision is that it's from an administration that understands, and It works in in Western Europe, but they have much shallower water. We just don't have the technology, not
Yeah.
even close. And so, yeah, this is right in the middle of my district. This is basically Brookings to Coos Bay, which is, but this fight is not over because let's say Trump doesn't get reelected or,
Yeah.
JD Vance or whomever, we have to be on our toes and watch this close. But it would hurt our tourism. It would hurt our fishing industry, and the technology absolutely is not there. And it takes us away from a focus of, you know, don't shut any more dams out.
Yeah.
Don't, I mean, it's just unbelievable the fight that we have to do, in the interest of logic. And so we'll just keep doing that. But no, I'm very happy about that decision. I just am telling everybody, and you basically alluded to it. It's we got a ways to go yet.
We
Maybe.
got a ways to go, and that's a very good point. Like we need to make sure that we send better representation to Congress so that we can pass some laws at the federal level that will make sure that this doesn't come back, that we don't see this happen again, right? We need as many people as possible doing that, and um, I know in the campaign last year, Monique Despain talked about this a lot,
Mhm.
and there was a lot of reporting about it and a lot of focus and a lot of feedback, and it was very hard to get our current member of Congress, um, Val Hoyle, to take a really clear position on it. She just talked about how, well, she'd tell the people at the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, well, people really don't like this. There's a lot of concerns about it. So just so you know that, you
Yeah.
know, just so
Where
you know that,
where do you
not
stand,
not
Congresswoman?
that's right. I mean, where is the vehemence, the finger pointing that she likes to do when she talks about how Trump's a dictator, and yet Trump's doing something for people in her district, and she doesn't really have anything to say about it. So that, I think, speaks volumes. I think we could use better representation in Congress. You and I both, I know, share that feeling, and I know that if people remember this, like the close call that they had, that can come right back. You're right; it can all come right back later.
Mhm.
195,000 acres or worse, because somebody thought it was a brilliant idea, and those people, I guarantee you, still think it's a brilliant idea.
Well, the developers, the public resistance has been so strong, Kevin, that it's going to be hard for developers to come back in this area. When they met with that level of, we don't. Sorry, but we don't want you here, and here's why. We're not just being, emotionally reactive. Here's where we are. So get the clue. Don't come back. But we still have to make sure that it's going to take quite a follow through.
Yeah, well, and I do think that they may need to reform that system of feedback because they just kept pretending like nobody was that upset about it, and yet we had good media reporting and good grassroots activism. So look, that's a success, and what we need, as you said, is to make common sense the law of Oregon, which it clearly isn't right now. There's clearly things stopping people from exercising common sense or even speaking about it. Now, let me ask you something about this special session before we go on to a couple of more items. Do you actually have to go to it? Is it like a regular legislative session where they try to mark you absent and all this stuff where they try to get, how does that work? I don't know
Well,
if it's different.
I've already got two unexcused absences on my program, so I have to be a little cautious. But no, I do not have to go. We do not have to go. Our leadership, their strategy is to go ahead and provide quorum, but we don't think they're going to have the votes, even on the Democratic side. That really remains to be seen. I think that's why the governor's being a little bit quiet right now.
Hmm.
And we've made it clear that if you want to raise taxes in any category, we're not going to support it. And we still think there's a couple Democrats that are in swing districts that are maybe getting the message that, you know, this is not good business. This is hurting the people you represent, and so that's where we are. I don't have to go, and I'm not committing myself. I do have plans that weekend, but when you're a legislator, you have to be prepared to change your plans at a moment's notice. That's just part of the job.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that it's clear how this works, because I know that Democrats forcing people to pass things that even some Democrats don't want, and those Democrats don't seem to be very happy with how the negotiations have gone with their own party. So,
Well, they
I
should be embarrassed, Kevin. They should be. They're in leadership. They control every part of Oregon government, and they couldn't come up with a plan. And they've just basically stiff armed our plan, which was really solid to save 780 million and make this all work. And nobody would have been laid off. Nobody.
nobody, yeah, everybody needs to hear that message until they're sick and tired of hearing it, so that they all know that it happened, that it's true, that it
It's
really is
ridiculous.
true. Yeah. So there was some interesting news I did want to make sure I shared with you. It was in apparently they've been threatening all the things they're going to cut because things have changed to the federal level. The federal level doesn't want to fork over as much money to fund the expanded Medicaid, which started under Barack Obama and then just started um, uh, basically covering many, many more people than the program was ever originally designed to cover. But also, now I guess they've also decided that they're not going to cover certain kinds of surgeries unless it's gender affirming surgery. And I was like, wait a second here. Um, that sounds like as optional as it gets. They're calling it risky surgery, except in cases of gender affirmation. So it no longer covers Medicaid in Oregon will no longer cover high risk surgery to remove excess skin from the lower abdomen unless it's part of gender affirming care.
Well, let me offer something here. Kaiser Permanente, one of the biggest hospital organizations in the country, they are no longer going to do gender transitional surgeries, and also the entire world. My staff sent me a note, but I didn't read it thoroughly. But basically, the headline is the entire world is saying no more, no more surgeries. And this is, I don't know if that was a United Nations approach or
Well, Denmark is one of the countries that started way long time ago with this, and now they're like, nope, not doing it anymore.
you're not going to move to Denmark, are you? Although it gives a just
No,
reason.
no, but it's interesting. The people who once were really big on it are quite a bit less enthusiastic about it now, just like you're saying.
Thank the good Lord, they have seen the light. The damage that does to children is just breaks your heart.
Meanwhile, there's life-saving surgeries and treatments that they say they don't have money for, and I'm just like, so these are choices that are being made by people who run the state of Oregon today, now, and it has consequences for sure. Now, uh, I know that you mentioned that there were some news updates that you had when we first talked about coming on, and I don't know if I hit the treetops literally on that. There's one more story I thought we might talk about that's very interesting relating to homelessness. But what are some of the things that you see going on right now that we should be paying attention to, good or bad?
Well, I don't know if you got the copy of my last newsletter, but let's go back to homelessness for a second. I think with the Oregon majority of citizens, that is the number one issue. Number two is affordability. Number three, as I read things, Kevin, is the education of our kids, and we're just let's start with homelessness. The millions and millions of dollars that we have spent has made things worse. Number two, affordability. As you said, Will said a minute ago, the rest of the country is enjoying wonderful economic times. In a general sense, that's true, except in the blue states. And so prices are coming down. I flew to Idaho for a human trafficking webinar and pro-life program over the weekend. And when I got back to my rental car, let's see, where was I? I noticed the gas prices were $1 less in Idaho than in Oregon. So affordability is just really hurting the people, especially rural Oregon. And then the public education, we spend more and more, enrollment's going down, and the results are strikingly worse. So, yeah, I think you said it well. That's where we are, and we're not solving problems. We're not creating a world of where things can work and should work, and something we can be proud of and have confidence in.
Well, here was one last interesting story I thought that I would mention, and it is that uh, one of your colleagues, Representative Yunker, there's a couple of stories associated with him. One is that he pointed out how President Trump's order on homelessness will actually help make us safer. And the name of that executive order is Ending Crime and Disorder on America's Streets, but it specifically is to put an end to the housing first um, and harm reduction focus for drug addicted, homeless, urban campers that we have lots of and are overwhelming our cities and counties with the consequences. And he's like, we're going to stop doing that. And the reason for it is because it doesn't work. It's actually making it worse. It's sponsoring it instead of ending it. And his executive order comes out, and then all the Democrats in Oregon are like, "Oh my God, no, it's the end of the world." And actually, Representative Yunker said, "Actually, I think it's going to work." What are your thoughts on what's happening with this now? Is it hopeful?
Well, Yunker represents a good part of our party that, again, is back to truth and facts and logic. And so, the homeless thing has been an unbelievable waste of valuable resources in our state, and and it takes resources from other important areas for our kids, for our our retaining businesses, recruiting businesses, etc. Just public safety, I think, is a huge one for me. So the whole homeless thing is it's going to get worse. People move here because of the it's lucrative to get free taxpayer
It's easy.
benefits, and so I got to work harder. What was I saw a little ad the other day that says, well, since I had to pass a drug test to be a taxpayer, you should have to pass a drug test to be able to get free stuff. So I'm not saying it exactly right, but boy, it just kind of hit home, and that's where our state is, unfortunately. And so, yeah, it's it's been a great, especially the last 16, 18 months. I can give you a report at the end of just some of the things that's just been very, very humbling for me to be a part of.
So here was the other story with Representative Yunker. He during the legislative session there was this uh, a bill that I think passed, right? To
1098, I'll bet you.
Yeah, for the school districts, right?
Yeah,
To
freedom to read is what is a label they put on it. If that's where you're going.
Yes, freedom to read bill, which was to prevent school districts from having any broad discretion over what books belonged in their libraries. And key or germane to that debate was reading what one of the books is that the Democrats were fighting to make sure you could keep in the library over the objections of the school board elected by the people in that district
Also, over the objections of the parents.
and the parents. And he read passages from it, but unfortunately, those passages in
Offended.
technically ran afoul or offended uh, some of the people, Democrats, in the legislative here on the floor. Right? He was reading it, and he was reading the stuff so that people knew what they were voting about. And now what they did is they filed a legislative equity office hostile workplace complaint against him, saying that it affected the employees' ability to do their jobs, which I guess, I don't know, what is it, the legislative assistants or
It's
somebody?
called Rule 27, and it basically says you just made it a hostile workplace environment. And and he's reading what they are demanding our kids read. And
Yeah.
I had a similar deal on the House floor where I get along fairly well with Speaker Fahey, but I was shut down twice because in debating that bill 1098, Kevin, I used the analogy of Ted Bundy, who 3 days before he died was interviewed by James Dobson per Bundy's request 3 days before he was executed. I want the world to know that pornography starting at about 10, 11, 12 years old is what started me on this path. I could never get enough. Subsequently, he murdered over 34 women, 34 confirmed, brutally over a 17-year period. And so twice the speaker shut me down, said that's not germane to this bill. And I said, yes, yes, Madam Speaker, it is, and here's why. I gave the rationale behind that. And so yeah, twice I was but I didn't get a Rule 27 against me. I don't think I was accused, or might at some point be accused of creating a hostile work environment. I don't know.
So the matter has gone to the Joint Committee on Conduct, which I don't exactly know how that works, but yes, Senate Bill 1098. And I don't know. This is very interesting. The Oregonian editorial board wrote a scathing editorial attacking the Democrats for doing this.
There's hope. There's hope.
There's hope. It says politics is not a safe space. And these are people that believe in safe spaces, but not here, because this is actually people, this is the most sacrosanct form of free speech you can have, which is the ability to debate what power the government should have over everything else you do, say, maybe even think. And it's by your elected representatives who should have unrestricted ability to do that. And the Democrats are trying to shut it down because it's just way too dangerous. This says everything you need to know about the Democrat Party in this state. They're
Oh
too
my God.
radical for the Oregonian.
We need them desperately to help us protect our kids. And I don't see anybody breaking ranks yet. Someday, some way, hopefully. But Juncker is definitely the guy to lead that charge. I'm proud that he's doing it. And he's a retired drill instructor. He is sold out for America. Absolutely loves his country, his God, and his family. And he's as tough as they come. And like all of us, he's imperfect. But yeah, he's leading the charge, and I'm grateful for it.
Well, it's great that you've got colleagues, and you guys are a team and you're fighting, and you know what you're fighting for. And there's so many things that we could do better. I really appreciate all the information that you share with us. By the way, I was trying to check and see if I received it. I received the May newsletter, but I can't find the other one, and that doesn't mean it didn't. These newsletters sometimes get caught in spam filters and stuff like that, because I love what you call it. It's called the Court Report, the voice of reason. I love it.
I get some fun comments. I went made a border trip a year ago, April, and that was a 3 day, just eye opening, heart wrenching time. I made it to the Republican National Convention. That to get to see Donald Trump 4 days after the assassination attempt. Whether you like him or not, you got to be impressed that it sure looks like a good Lord spared his life and the work he's doing now. I mean, there's so many positives out there that we can hang our hat on, and I did that in the House floor. Hostages coming home. Peace between. Pakistan and India, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's a heck of a list. But I also had the honor, Kevin, of speaking co-guest speaker of the Oregon Taxpayers Association with Andy Ngo. You might remember that he was the guy that twice was beaten in 19 months brutally, and he was just trying to cover the rotten Antifa or Antifa, however you say that. And it's just to be able to speak next to him that day was very special. And then let's see, what's another one? I had the last bill on the House floor, 1047, and I'm holding my breath waiting for the governor to sign that. But after 700 or 800 bills we voted on, just moments before we did the official adjournment, that was quite an honor. I can't remember the fourth one, but there were several, but it's been quite a year. And
I found it, by the way. I found it. I just had to use the right search terms. And Jay Jin.
Oh, that was
Yemen's
oh, that
Massacre
yes.
freedom fighter.
Thank you. I mean, that lady, when she was a young woman in 1984 at Tiananmen Square, she had a machine gun and she was fighting the Chinese. She miraculously escaped China, and now she's a strong, patriotic American from the Seattle area. I brought her down to the House floor and recognized her. What incredible honor! And then Wendell Barnett, the 15-year chaplain. He walked 1,000 miles between the House and Senate side, and just an incredible man. And why me? Why did I get to recognize him on House floor? But that's who he asked, and it's just he's just a great man, and he made a difference. So yeah, a few things like that just make me feel like I must be somewhat headed in the right direction.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. Um, and your newsletter is great. It really covers a whole swath of things that you did and got to witness. And I think folks got to make sure that they sign up for that. And they can do that, I think, by going to your website. And I think they can sign up there. They can get information about how to sign up for your newsletter so they can receive it on a regular basis.
Well, you just go to Coach Court, COACHCOURT, coachcourt@gmail.com is probably the simplest.
Coach Court. I think I typed that into the thing last time, so I should have remembered that. Coach Court at gmail.com.
I'd love to hear from people and, just, dialogue and work on saving Oregon.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for doing that and continuing the fight and fighting for your beautiful district and fighting for Oregonians, all of us who would like to see common sense become the law of the land here in the state of Oregon. You got to believe that there are people that have common sense, and maybe they're listening to the show right now. Maybe they're listening for the very first time to something that sounds like common sense to them. And so we got to keep doing it. And I really appreciate that you're out there doing it every day, Representative Boyce.
Well, hey, you are very much appreciated. It's fun to talk to people that you can trust and that believe what you believe and love what you love. And you just do a great job, Kevin. And wish you all the best. Please let me know how I can help over the days, weeks, months, and years. And just really appreciate this opportunity and the friendship.
You bet. Like always, I got you. I got you. And I think people need to go check out your websites too. I just posted those again here. The legislative website, OregonLegislature.gov/Boyce, and also your campaign website, which has a lot of great information about you and about things you're involved with and have done and the people you've met. CourtBoyceForOregon.com. That's CourtBoyceFOR Oregon.com. Representative Boyce, thanks for being here with me tonight.
Hey, let's do this again soon. Thanks a million. And hopefully right before or after the special session, let's see if we can catch up with you. Much appreciated.
That would be great. Could get interesting. We'll see what happens, but I know you'll have the inside skinny and we'll share it with us. So thank you very much.
All the best.
And thanks everyone for watching here tonight. Share this show with everyone you can. And we will see you on the next episode of The Captive Audience. I'm going to have Kevin Dahlgren coming up here very soon with an episode. And he's great too. And he's doing some amazing stuff. And he's another one of those voices out there in the wilderness fighting for common sense and the very important issue of homelessness and addiction. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.